Yo, 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 what's going on, coaches? It's your man, Immanuel, back with a new episode of Multiply Your Sales. And today I got a very special guest joining me on the show. I got my man, Dee Greene. What's going on with you, bro?
What's good, bro? Appreciate you having me on, man.
Oh man, it's an honor, man. It's an honor, man. I came across your YouTube channel. I absolutely love your content. Like you're helping coaches out. And I was like, man, it would be a joy to have my man come on the podcast and drop some gems on us. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. One of the things that I like to do before we dive into the convo is set the stage. Let all of the coaches listening know who is going to be able to get the most benefit out of what we're going to be talking about today. And I truly believe the coaches who will be able to get the most out of it are those who are either currently going through a tough time or they're aware enough to realize that at some point in time, they are going to face some tough times as a coach and they want to know how to navigate those waters when they come along. And additionally, we'll also be helping out coaches who may be struggling to make the type of money that they desire to make as a coach. We're also going to drop some gems and provide them with some strategies and things that they can take into consideration when it comes to landing clients. So if that's any of y'all out there listening or watching, yo, you're going to want to watch this from start to finish. With that in mind, D, I want to kick it off to you. Why do you think many coaches tend to struggle or allow tough times to cripple them or their progress?
That's a good question. I think the basic answer is just like that's just how we're conditioned. I think, especially in the US, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're a kid, you have all this like imagination, but then as you get older, it's like, oh, be more realistic, or don't. What about if this happens or that happens? And so I think what happens is when we get older, we start taking that into consideration. So I feel like most people think that the information is not why they are where they want to be. So they're always searching for more information, more information. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the real reason that I've seen a lot of people is like they're not taking the risks that they need to, right? They're not chasing the dreams that they need to. They're not like fully committing. They have this like, let me see. Like they might listen to your show, get a piece of advice and be like, let me see if it works. Let me try it. And then if it doesn't work after like 30 days, even though they put in like 10% of the effort, it's like, that didn't really work. Let's try the
Yeah.
next thing. So there's a bunch of different factors, but I think it's really just like the mindset, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah. And you hit on a number of different aspects that I would say can cripple somebody or delay their progress as a coach. And honestly, just in life in general, but especially those who are coaches and business owners for sure. With that in mind, I kind of want to look at your journey. When you look back on your life, what would you say are some tough times that almost derailed you that you had to overcome?
A lot, bro. That could be a whole podcast series on its own.
All right,
We
let's
could
pick
do.
one. Like, what's the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that stands
yeah.
out to you most? It could either be the one that you felt like was the toughest to overcome, or let's talk about the most recent one that you had to overcome. I'll let you choose.
I'll talk about the first time. The first time I
Okay.
ever decided that I was gonna go all in. Because I think what I
Mm,
realized is there's very few people that have ever went all in on something. Like
right.
that doesn't mean that they're not chasing their dream or they're not trying.
Hmm.
But there's very few people that will say, for example, okay, I'm gonna start a coaching business, and my goal is to make, let's say my goal is to make 20K, let's say the next month or whatever it is, right? And it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if the lights are going to get turned off, if you can't feed your family. Like most people aren't going to push it to the very end. So for
Right.
me, 2018, me and my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, had went on like a cruise. And then when we came back, I had this idea of like, yo, that was really fun. Like we should do more trips. Started looking
Hmm.
online and I was like, dang, I could go to like Europe and it's not as expensive as I thought. So I was like, man,
Hmm.
it'd be really cool to go to Paris. And then when I had the idea to go to Paris, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I like proposed like when I was there. At the time, I didn't have a coaching business. I was like doing
Mm,
really random stuff like with people that I knew. So I didn't have
okay.
like stable income. I
Hmm.
didn't have a ring. I didn't have any
Wow.
money. I was like in like credit card debt. I had never been overseas, and my wife didn't. My girlfriend at the time didn't have a passport.
Mm,
So that day, I was like, I have to make a commitment. Like, am I going to
hmm.
do this or not? Like, I don't like
Right.
this whole like, let me see. I'm like, either I'm going to Paris or I'm not.
Hmm.
They ain't no,
Right.
hey, let me try, let me see what happens. I was like, I'm not doing that. I want to see what happens if I go all in. So I bought this notebook and I gave myself a time limit. I think it was like 70 days, 75 days. Can't remember the exact amount. But I was
Hmm.
like, I'm going to write in this and I'm going to push towards this every single day that I gave myself. Like,
Mm,
there's not going to be one day that I quit. I don't care if I get kicked out of my apartment, I get kicked out of it. If I can't buy food, I can't
mm,
get buy food. But I'm not going to ever write in this that, hey, I gave up or that I quit. And I just
yeah.
want to see what happens, because like I've never done that. I don't know what it's like to fully believe in doing something.
Mm,
And I thought it was going to be easy. I'm like, all right, cool. And I think like the first or second day, I was like, I'm gonna go to the bank and like just ask them
mhm.
if I can just get a loan, right? They just give me the money and it's simple. And they were like, hell, no, I'm not giving you money for that. So then like my friend had this like app, and he was like, all right, if you can go around and show business owners this app, just
Mhm,
tell them that they can pay like $60 a month and I'll promote their business. So I'm like, oh,
mm.
that's only $60 a month. I don't think we got one person to take us up on that, like the whole time.
Wow.
So it got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm doing the thing that a lot of people aren't doing, which is like taking the action every day. But it got to
Mhm,
the point where I was like, if I really want to like achieve this goal, this dream, I have to
mhm.
just like have extreme faith that God is gonna like make something happen. And I
Right.
was like, this is like the first time where I was like, I have to just rely on him making it happen. I had got like an eviction letter actually. They're like, yo,
Mm,
you haven't paid your rent, like we're gonna kick you out. And I was like, okay, I can either have like fear set in and be like, man, what happens if I get kicked out or this or that? Or I
mhm.
was just like, I'm committing like to the goal. Like I said, I'm gonna
Right.
do this, I'm gonna do it. And it was like on the last day, like a whole bunch of crazy stuff like happened. Like my wife got
Mm.
like her passport like at the last second. I had like a letter from like the IRS with some money that was like super random. And like
Wow.
I ended up going and ended up proposing, was there for like a week. And it like that really showed me like, man, if I have like extreme faith, like I can do a lot of crazy stuff. And after that, like we ended up going to Italy for like 2 weeks for like our honeymoon that got
Wow.
paid. Like that's like a whole nother story in itself. And fast forward, I invested in 2020. I invested like 10K into like a business coach during the pandemic, like when I didn't have any
Mhm,
money or none of that type of stuff. That
mhm.
turned into like ended up doing like over $100,000 in like the first 6 months. Like with that
Wow.
money after that risk, ended up
Mhm,
becoming like digital nomads. Went on this crazy journey. Like I ended up coming to Europe by myself last summer, and
wow.
then like ended up in Budapest, Hungary, where I'm at now. So like I think I just started learning that like things like almost always work out. Like
Mhm.
almost the worst case scenario almost never happens, and it's
Yeah.
usually better than you ever expected. And if it isn't,
Mhm.
you just got to wait like a little bit longer. But
Right.
things normally play out way better. So, but that was like the first time that got me to see like, yo, if I have like a specific goal and I fully
Mhm.
like go after it and I'm really attacking it and trusting, like it almost always like pays off. And if it doesn't, it points me in like a better direction.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yo, that's dope. And there are a few different things that you talked about, right? So the two notable things that you've mentioned that stood out to me is you talked about going all in and also being willing to embrace risk. And when we talk about overcoming hard times, tough times, I think that those are the challenges that most people have is going all in or taking risks. Usually people are seeking comfort. So I want to kind of go back to your story and really kind of tap into, was there a catalyst? Like what prompted that shift for you to be like, all right, man, I want to go all in. I'm ready to take this risk, see what happens. Like, was there something that just kind of brought about that shift in your life at that time?
I think like what I can remember is like just being tired. I felt like people were lying to me, bro. I just felt like
Mm,
whenever I turn on the TV and somebody wins an award or something, they're always
mhm.
say, I did it, you can do it too. And I
Yeah, they
felt
do.
like
They do say that.
but I'm not though. Like you're always
Mm,
saying that, but
mhm.
I'm not. And I look around
Yeah,
and they're not. And I look around and they're not. Only people that are doing it are those famous people.
right.
So not to, and then I felt like people at church were lying. I'm like, y'all always
Mm,
talking about how like if you believe in God, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, like amazing thing could happen. I'm like, ain't none of y'all doing nothing amazing. And
mm,
and and you feel a type of way when I say that. I'm not saying you don't believe in God. I'm not saying that being saved or having God in your life isn't amazing. What I'm
right.
saying is that you're doing the same stuff as everyone else that I know. You're not doing anything
Mm,
different. You're not achieving anything special. You're not living a happier life. You're not being more fulfilled. You're doing the very basic stuff that everyone else is doing. So
mhm,
I don't know. I got to a point where I was like, these people at church keep saying this, but it's not really happening. People that
mhm,
aren't in church keep saying this, but it's not happening. I was like, I need to pick something in my life that is super hard to achieve and
mm,
go after it. That way I can be someone that one proves it to myself. And then I can say others, like
right.
you can do it too. Like I did it. And so I don't know why I think for that, it just was like it was the first time like I could even think of like a big enough dream like that to
Mhm.
where I'm like, this actually really excites me. Like I would love to, I had never been overseas before. So I'm like going on like on a long flight would be cool. Going to Paris, I think for most Americans is like a big
Mhm.
dream. Proposing there is like a big dream. Proposing in
Yeah.
general is a dream. So I was just like, this is something that if I go all in and it works, is
Mhm.
worth it. It's worth the risk. It's not just
Right.
like, hey, I want to start a new business and then either I have a business or
Mhm.
I didn't feed my family and like I'm like on the streets homeless. It was just like, hey,
Right.
if I can't pay my rent, but I go to Paris, at least I'll have the story to tell, like, in the
Yeah.
future. And I come back, I'm like engaged. So I think it was just me tired of just really having like a average life. Like I knew like
Mhm.
deep down, I'm like, yo, there's more to life than this. Like, and I know
Mhm.
I'm already doing more than most, but I'm
Mhm.
more like believing more than most, but I'm not really achieving more than most. So I have the belief.
Right.
I want to actually achieve something that, even if it's just this one thing, is like,
Mhm.
yo, I had a big dream and I went for it and I actually achieved it. I just really wanted to prove to myself like that was possible, I think.
Wow, man. And what you're saying, I can relate to it because I've definitely been in that position where, you kind of get upset with people saying, yo, it's so easy, anybody can do it, you can do it too. And like you mentioned, you're not experiencing that. That's not your experience. Like you want it, you desire it, you believe that it could happen for you, but it's just not happening. And then, like you mentioned, when people that are more spiritually minded are telling you that, oh, yo, you just gotta have faith, you just trust God, just believe him, it'll happen. But then you're like, yo, I'm doing that, you doing that, but I'm not seeing like what I want manifested in my life ain't there. And the things that you desire not there either. So it's like, what's missing, where's the missing link, how do we get there? And definitely let me know if what I heard is not accurate. One of the things that I heard you say was you had a very specific goal and there was something that you wanted. Would you say that that is kind of like that missing link, that key that prevents people from going all in, is the fact that either they don't have a big enough goal or they don't want something bad enough to be willing to put everything on the line and just go all in for it?
Not necessarily. I think a lot of people don't have a specific enough goal in order
Mhm.
to know the action steps they need to take.
Mhm.
But I think for a lot of people, it's like it's the mindset shift. Like
Mhm.
they're thinking of the worst case scenario versus the best case scenario. Like when
Mhm.
I had that in mind, I'm not I don't even think I really spent any days really thinking about like, but what if I don't go and I get kicked out of my apartment, or what if I'm on the street, or what if I can't? I'm not even thinking of, I don't
Mhm.
waste like time thinking about that. I'm
Okay.
thinking every day like, you know how dope it's gonna be when I go over there, like, and I'm hearing like people speaking French, and I'm drinking like a
Mhm.
European coffee, and I'm like looking at the Eiffel Tower, and you know how
Yeah.
cool that's gonna be more like on the flight. You know how that's cool it's gonna be when I have the ring in it. Like I'm only thinking about like what's gonna like the best case
Mm.
scenario.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, let's say coaches in general, they
Mhm.
might not always have a specific goal, but they have like a, hey, I want to make 10K, or I want to start a business, or I want to be on YouTube. But let's
Mhm.
say even like making video, right? We were talking about that in the
Mhm.
beginning. They don't
Yeah.
think, a lot of people aren't thinking, what if these videos do really good? It helps me get clients. It helps me, change someone else's life. It helps me get on a podcast like we're doing
Mhm.
now, all these good things. They go,
Mhm.
man, I listened to, this show and they said to get on YouTube. But what if people don't like my accent though? What if people make fun of me? What if there's
Mm.
people trolling in the comments? What if
Mhm.
like I put out the videos and they get 0 views? What if I don't know how to do a thumbnail? What if I'm rambling? What if I like
Mhm.
why are we even wasting time thinking about that stuff? Like I was telling one of my
Mhm.
friends the other day, I'm like,
Mhm.
there's zero benefit of doubting yourself. At least be delusional and think you're going to be amazing. That way, if you never are, at least every day you're thinking that you're going to be. So at
Mhm.
least you enjoy yourself on the way to nothing, right? It's like being in the NBA. It's better to like, why would you think we're never going to win a championship? At least
Right.
be like, I'm going to win one this year and then I'll win one next year. That way, even if you don't ever win, you're enjoying yourself like every game, thinking at least you're going to win. So
Right.
I think it's not necessarily the missing key isn't like they don't have a specific goal. It's the faith to like, they know that they want to jump out of the airplane. They know they want to
Mhm.
skydive, but then they're just like, oh crap, like I'm up here. Like this is so scary. And
Mhm.
it's like, bro, just jump. Like you have the person on the back of you. Like you
Yeah.
already watched the safety video, you're already harnessed in and all that type of stuff. You just got to go for it. So I think a lot of people, it's just, they're living that life in like fear. They want to invest in your program, my program, someone else's program. They want to send those 200 DMs. They want to get on YouTube. They want to send out the emails, but fear comes in. Well, what if I send out the email? No one clicks on it. It's like, bro, but if at least if you send it, you have an opportunity, and then
Right.
just get better, right? So I think a lot of it's just like the mindset of
Mhm.
of fear and the doubt. Like if even if I did have a goal and even if I did do it, it's not going to work anyway. So why even try? Or if I do
Mhm.
try, it didn't work right away. So why keep pushing?
Yeah. Man, I really appreciate you for correcting that, right? Because I get what you're saying now. Like it's not setting a goal or it being big or you desiring or wanting something, because those things can be in place, but you still not go all in, right? And what I just heard you say is it's more so about, and this is the way I'm kind of interpreting it. Definitely let me know if I'm wrong, right? Is it's almost how you perceive and what you're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. Like, are you focusing solely on the worst case scenario? Or are you looking at all of the great things that you're going to accomplish, that you're going to experience, and allowing that to be the thing that, for lack of a better term, is fueling you when you wake up every day and you take action and you get stuff done? Is that
Exactly.
is that more in line
Exactly.
with what you're saying? Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that in mind, like, how do you think somebody makes that shift? Like, how does somebody go from thinking negative, playing the worst case to playing the best case scenario in their mind on a daily basis? Like, how does that shift happen?
Well, I mean, on a very basic level, if in order for them to hear us talking about this right now, they have to obviously be listening to this, right? Like that's very common sense. So, like, in order for them to hear my answer right now, they got to be watching this. So,
Right.
the next answer is to do more of this. If you
Mhm.
have that mindset of fear, but you watch this, and then after this, you go and watch like murder movies and thrillers on Netflix, and then just keeping up with the Kardashians and basketball. I'm not saying that stuff is wrong, but like that's all you're watching, and you're around family members that we love our cousins, our moms, whoever, but like a lot of them are living in fear too. So if you're only
Mhm.
around those types of people and you're like, man, I just listened to this podcast, I'm going to create a coaching program, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to like move to a different country, I'm going to do all this stuff. Those people aren't going to be like, yes, you should do it. They're going to be like, yeah, but I know, like, shouldn't you have like a backup plan, or like that sounds a little scammy, or whose podcast was that, or how much you have to invest? Like they're going to ask you all these types of questions.
Right.
So it's like we have to intentionally be consuming stuff that teaches
Mhm.
us those types of things, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to get better at like playing a specific sport, like you would be watching soccer more and like actually playing soccer more and like being around soccer players. So it's like for me, that's what I did. I'm like, I got to go subscribe to the YouTube channels that are only talking about that type of stuff because I don't have those people around me. I got to buy the books that are talking about that. I got to unfollow my cousins, my friends. They're going to be upset, but it's like, I didn't do it because I don't love you. It's
Right.
because you're posting about your food every day. I don't really care about that right now. That's just real. Like I
Yeah.
gotta go follow people that are gonna be telling me like whenever I pull up my phone, like, yo, go to work, like believe in yourself, blah blah. So it's like being intentional about consuming that type of stuff, like your podcast, other people's podcasts. There's like a lot of stuff, and when you start listening to that stuff over and over again, like it becomes like a part of like who you are.
Yeah.
So you just have to keep consuming that and consuming that until you get to that level, and you got to be also aware of the stuff that we like, especially like in the Black community. There's stuff that we like that really doesn't serve us, but we're just listening
Yeah.
to it or vibing to it just because it's a vibe or it has like a good beat. But it's like, and we don't want to miss out on those conversations of, oh, did you see this or did you listen to that? But it's like just being like, hey, there's a time and a place for that, but right now I got to get in this positive mindset. And I'm not there to where I can do it myself. So I got to go get that fuel from other people that know, that have that energy, and I got to borrow their energy. So it's like being intentional and surrounding yourself with that stuff.
Nah, that's so good, man. Because I feel like you hit on two major pieces to being able to make that shift in mindset, which is the first, consumption, right? The things that you're consuming, making sure they align with the type of mindset that you want to have, aligning with the type of things that you want to be thinking about on a daily basis. And I think in tandem with that, you didn't use this word, but I think it's kind of like right there under the surface, which is meditation. Like, not necessarily practicing meditation. I mean, that doesn't hurt, but the thoughts and the things that you're meditating
Yeah.
based on what you consume will also have an impact on your thoughts and the beliefs that you have moving forward. So, nah, man, like, yo, like, you cooking already. And for most coaches, the other thing that we're going to be talking about is them wanting to make a certain amount of money, but they're not. Like, let's kind of tie that into what you've been talking about, because I think that that is one of those challenges that people have, is like, hey, I want to be a coach making, like you mentioned, like 20K a month, if we use that as an example, but they are not in the mindset of that's what they can do. It's a desire that they want, it's a goal that they have, but they haven't yet consumed and meditated on the things that will allow that to manifest and come to fruition in their life. What would you advise them to do in that situation?
I think the first step, honestly, is like, why? Because like it may sound silly, but it's like, why do you want to make 20K a month and not 19? Like
Mm,
I ask people
yeah,
that, and they're like, what do you
yeah,
mean? And I'm like, well, like, why? Like, your goal just happens to be an even number. Like, why is it 20K? Why is it, why is it $100,000 a year? Like, why isn't it 98?
right.
Like, and so I'm like, it might sound silly and it might sound like I'm trolling you, but I'm being serious. Like, why is
Mhm,
it that we want, like, we're just seeing other people post these numbers and then we want to make them. So I'm
right.
like, there's a lot of people I talk to where like your goal really is to just go fishing on the weekends with your kid.
Mm,
And right now you're burning yourself out to make $20,000 a month, which would be like over $200,000 a year. Why are
mhm,
you killing yourself to get to that point when the dream where you'd be most fulfilled costs you like $40,000 a year? Go make 80 and do that. Right. So I think that's the first thing. And like, don't worry about anyone else. It's not about like getting your ego stroked by being able to post on Facebook, like, hey, I had a $20,000 month. We don't care about you, bro. Like,
right.
I know it feels good to get likes on your photos, but like people really don't care. Like when you're depressed, those people ain't going to be calling you. They're not going to be texting you. They ain't going to be reaching out. So don't do stuff for the rest of us just to flex, because
Mhm,
they're not really there for you. Like do stuff for yourself and the people in your close circle. So I think really you got to dig deep into like, why am I doing this? So now let's say you figured out, okay, well, I want to do 20K, but it's going to help me do this, this, and this. I think what I try to do is like not be emotional about it. And
mhm,
it's like I tell my wife all the time, right? It's like women, they get really emotional like when they want to do something. It's like take a second, not be emotional, and look at it as if you're like a third party person looking in, and
mhm,
be just look at it from a logical standpoint. So you want to get to 20K, you're not there. Why are you not there? Like, what don't you know how to do, and what would you need to do in order to get there? What are the steps you need to get? So then there's really only two options. Either one is like you need to go learn how to do those things, or two, you got to invest in somebody to help you get to that point. And I
right.
think that's where the excuses come in. Oh, I
Mhm,
don't have time for another course. I don't have time to read another book. I don't have time to go on YouTube and watch this up. Oh, I don't want to invest more money because it's like, okay, then. So just be happy like where you're at. Cause it sounds
mhm,
like you know what you need to do to get to this point, but you don't want
mhm,
to do any of that stuff. You just
mhm,
want someone to go, hey, here's a 20K month. Let me just write you a check. And it doesn't work like that. So
right.
what happens is people, and even myself included, it's like, yo, right now you're at this point, in order to get here, you got to send, let's say like 50 DMs a day. It's like,
Mhm,
oh, but I don't have time to do that. Okay, cool. In order to be on YouTube, you need to do this, right? Oh, no, I don't have time to do that. All right, I have an easier way for you. Here's a course. Just take this course. It's going to show you what to do. I don't have time for another course. And it's like all the people that I know that make these excuses, like you don't end up hitting those goals, or you do, and you end up like falling off. And so it's
mm,
like you have to have this mindset of like, it's like, bro, make it happen. Like there's no such thing as like, let me try or let me see, like make it happen. And then
right.
heard a quote like the other day. Somebody was like, work like it all depends on you, but then like pray like everything like depends on God. So it's like you got to
Mm,
put in the work, but then you also have to believe that it's gonna like work out. But I think a lot of people, it's just like they just want the stuff handed to them. It's like,
mhm,
I want to be a coach. I want to make 20K months. It's like, dude, that's a lot of stuff we got to do. Like, you got to follow up with people. You got to work on your messaging. You got to send emails. You got to be on social media. You got like, you're doing a podcast right now. Like, you got to record
yeah,
this. You got to edit it. You got to like prep me before the thing. Like, bro, there's a lot of this stuff. People don't talk about this stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that me and you don't want to do. Like, it
right.
sucks. We want to quit. It gets annoying. You're like, this
Yeah.
dude's internet's messing up. Like, there's stuff that gets like frustrating. But like we just keep pushing through it. And because we're pushing
Mhm,
through it, like we're able to achieve those other things. And then people are like, what's the secret sauce? Bro, the secret sauce is like just doing it. Like
mm,
do the stuff that you don't want to do and then just have belief that it comes. But that's not
Yeah.
sexy to sell. So people don't talk about that. It's
Mhm.
like, oh,
Right.
here, just use my email script and you'll get to 20K. Hey, just
Yeah.
manifest and you get to 20K. It's like, in reality, it doesn't work like that. Like, I get
Mhm.
why we do that to sell stuff,
Mhm.
but and I think you would agree that like there's a lot of stuff that we don't want to do that you have to either do or you have to pay someone to figure out like how to get to that point. Like it's just a
Right.
lot of hard work that sucks that you just have to do.
Right, right, and it's so interesting because oftentimes it's the things that we don't want to do that ultimately become like those needle movers. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why some people aren't able to move the needle the way they want because they're like, that thing is so it's so tiny, it's so little, like I can just as easily not do it as do it. And
Right.
and to be fair, like I get that from, I'm not sure if you've read the book The Slight Edge, but that's essentially the concept that he makes is it's those things that are just as easy for you to not do or to do them. And the difference between people who are able to accomplish the things that people are like, yo, I really want that, is they do that stuff that is just as easy as not to do. They go ahead and do it. And they do it every single day. And it begins to
Yep.
create what we know as the compounding effect, right? But yeah, man, I would say that's definitely been the case is most people don't want to do that grunt work, for lack of a better term. But it's often those things that build the perseverance, that put the skills in you to be able to go accomplish the things that you want to ultimately.
100%, bro. It's like even like right now, right? It's
Mhm,
like I live in Hungary. I live in Budapest, Hungary. So it's like 7 p.m. But sometimes when people ask me to do stuff like this, it's at like 10 or 11 p.m. my time, right?
mhm,
And then like I hear people's like, yeah, but I don't want to have to get up that late. And I'm like, bro, like we have like there's way too many excuses for the type of results we want. Like
mhm.
you realize that most people in America are making like 40, 50K like a year. And you know, they have to go to work like 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours and
Right,
commute in order to get to that. They got like maybe 2 weeks of vacation. But
right.
you're saying you want to make 20K months, not having to send DMs, not having to post on YouTube, not having to do a podcast, not having to reach out to people, not having to
Mhm,
do anything. And then you just want to be on the beach chilling. Everything is automated and delegated, and you don't want to do any of the work in the beginning to get there. And it's like, bro, what kind of world do we live in? Like, this doesn't work
right.
like that. It's like even like your podcast, you know what I mean? It's like there's going to be episodes in the beginning for most of us where it's like, bro, they suck. Like, you don't know how to set stuff up, you don't know how to talk
Mhm,
to the guests. There's technical issues. That's the stuff people don't like think about. And then when
right.
they come across those, they just like give up. And it's
Mhm,
like people don't want to know that that's the secret sauce. It's like people just doing it
yeah.
anyways. Like they're still scared, they're still worried, they're still frustrated, they're irritated.
Mhm,
Like stuff is not working, but they're still, like you said, needle movers. Like they still doing stuff. Like that's really the key.
right. Yeah, and it's so interesting because oftentimes people they will start, and I think that's a good thing, right? Is that most people have it within them to start, but it goes back to something that you said is once they realize like, oh, I got to do this every day, like I got to do this for 30 days, I got to do this for 90, like hold on, like I
Right,
thought
right.
I just gotta just send this one DM and then like my whole life is gonna change, like nah. So nah, man, I'm really glad that you pointed that out because like you mentioned, I think this is at the heart of people, in this case, coaches, achieving the goals that they set, whether it's, building their businesses, making the type of money that they want to make. It ultimately boils down to how are you thinking about the goals that you set and the things that you want to accomplish, and what are you doing on a daily basis to make those things come to fruition. And if there's not alignment in your mindset and the things that you want and the work that you're putting in on a daily basis, that's when you don't see the things that you want in your life manifesting. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And kind of going back to, not just when you set the goal for Paris, but let's kind of shift gears a bit. I'm sure you've done the same thing when it comes to goals that you wanted to hit in your business. And it kind of makes me curious to know, like, what does that daily task or to-do list look like for you? Like, how do you determine these are the things that I have to do every day in order for me to be able to get the results that I want? Like, how do you determine that?
Yeah, so I think like what I've kind of a framework I've been using is like I have a game plan. And the game
Okay.
plan is like everything that needs to get done. So let's say, for example, the game plan is like the goal, right? So let's say, for
Mhm,
example, you want to make, let's make it simple. You want to make like a 10K in a month, right? So it's
mhm,
like, what are all the things that I would need to do in order to get to that? So I might need to send DMs. Like I'll come up with a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe not
mhm,
everything I'm going to do, right?
mhm,
I could send DMs, I could send emails, I could post, I could do a challenge, like all the stuff I can like creatively think about. So then
mhm,
what I like to do is, okay, what can I do now? I don't like the word later. It's like, what can I
yeah,
do like right now? Not like in an hour, not like later, like what could I do now?
right,
So it's like, okay, right now, maybe I don't know how to send emails. So let me just send like a DM, or maybe I don't even know how to send DMs. Okay, well then I could watch a video on YouTube. Like there's always some, I think people underestimate like action doesn't always have to be doing the thing. It could be
mhm,
learning the thing or getting better at the
mhm,
thing. So maybe right now, like this is you doing the thing. It's like I
mhm,
want to build a coaching program, but I don't know how to build the coaching program. So I'm listening to a podcast on how to do it. But like,
right,
don't wait until later. So I'm always just like, okay, what does that look like? One book that's helped me when it comes to the seeing those is called the 12-week year. So instead
mm,
of having like a yearly goals, you have like 12-week goals, and then every
okay,
single day you have the main thing. So what I on a practical level, what I'm doing is I'm writing everything that I want to do, like everything that comes to the top of my head. I'm putting
mhm,
it into my reminders, like on the Apple like notes.
yeah,
So then in the morning, I'm looking at all that stuff and I just move everything that's not important to like the next day or the next week or whenever. So then
mm,
eventually I just have a list of like the stuff that I want to do today. And then
mhm,
I'm like, okay, what's the most important thing right now? So for example, if it says like DM 25 people,
mhm,
let's say like update my website and
mhm,
then, change the prices. I'm not gonna work on like Canva for like 30 minutes, like 3 hours when I could like send the DMs that's gonna like move the needle, right? Like we're
right,
talking about. So I think that's where I see a lot of people. It's like, okay, I want to make more money this month. And really I should be DMing these people, but I've been spending like 2 weeks on like the color of my brand. It's like, bro,
mm,
that like, why are you working on your website right now? That has
right,
nothing to do with anything. And a lot of it is it's not that you don't know that it's the wrong thing. You're doing what's comfortable because you don't want to send the DMs. We don't want to do the hard stuff. And
right,
so for me, like this stuff is like I think I'm just accepting the fact that it's gonna suck. Like it's not you're not
mm,
trying to make like it's not gonna be easier. It's like going to the gym. Like bro, like bench
mhm,
pressing is not gonna feel comfortable. Like it's
yeah,
gonna suck. Like doing the squats is gonna suck. Like all that stuff is gonna
mhm,
suck. But you just do it. Like you just got to do it.
right,
So I think for me, it's like just putting all the stuff in there and moving all the stuff that I don't need to do. I'll have like a
mhm,
remainder of what I got to do for that day, and then just taking the top ones and then be like, okay, what do I need to do now? And then mark that off and then do the next thing and do the next thing. So
yeah,
then even if you only get a couple things done in that day, you got the most important things done. You didn't like, man, I only got my website colors done for today. It's like that didn't really matter. Like you should have.
yeah,
And most of the time, it's not the thing isn't hard to do. It's starting to do the thing.
mm,
So it's like DMing the people isn't hard, but making the decision to actually do it is the
mhm,
hard thing. So you just have
yeah,
to I think for me, I just challenge myself to just I might not finish it. I'm just trying to
mhm,
get started. And then once you get
yeah.
started, you're like, okay, like, let me just go ahead and finish this.
Mhm. And with that in mind, I think another thing that kind of comes into play, and definitely let me know your thoughts on this, is people, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about before when it comes to the mindset, is they're like, okay, I'm gonna send the DM. I can send all 25 of them, but what type of response am I going to get? Like, is anybody going to respond? I feel like sometimes people are more focused on what the result will be as
Yeah.
opposed to focusing in on just getting the thing done. Like, have you noticed that?
Yeah. And I think it's for myself. And what I tell people is like,
Mhm,
how do I say it? It's like you just learn. Like, bro, it's gonna suck. It's just
mhm,
like if you send the DMs and they don't work, you just think about like why they didn't work. Like,
mhm.
did you not send enough? If you didn't send enough, then the next time you send more. If
Yeah.
you sent them but they didn't reply, how do you get better? That's what I mean. I'm like, that's all life is. There's no like
Mhm,
no one is doing everything perfect. Like
right.
I don't really know like your story with the podcast, but
Mhm,
and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but like you did a really good job in the beginning of saying like, yo, this is the protocol for this is the protocol for that. Like most people don't really do that. It's just like they'll give you like an introduction of like, hey, this is how it's going to go, but they don't have all these like protocols. So
mhm,
in my mind, that came about either you heard someone else saying to do that and you're like, that's a really good idea, or you started doing these and people
mhm,
didn't know what to do in certain situations. And so then you're like, all right, I need to start telling these people like what to do. And so I'm
Right.
like, that's all like life and business is. Like you just do stuff. You take it's like being a scientist. You
Yeah.
try something, you look at the result, and then you don't get emotional about it, and you just do the next thing. And then
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, but what if people don't reply? I'm like, they're not gonna reply. What if people don't buy
Mhm.
my stuff? They're not gonna buy it. Like that's what's gonna happen. So you every day,
Mhm.
I was listening to Tom Bilu at this event that I was at recently, and he
Mm.
was like,
Mhm.
your goal isn't the results. Your goal is to learn. And if you can
Mhm.
dedicate yourself to being a lifelong learner and you
Mhm.
have the mentality that if I learn enough, eventually I'll be great, then there's no way that you'll ever fail. Because like every day
Mhm.
you're just learning. And if you just learn more every single day, eventually you get to the only way really, if we really think about it, the only way
Mhm.
for you to not have the best podcast ever is
Mhm.
either you quit or you die. But if you
Mhm.
like kept getting better and better
Yeah.
and better and better, and like you kept going to events and learning, eventually, technically, if that's all you focused on, you could do it. But most of us,
Right.
we just quit. We just quit too early.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think and I think also it's in the coaching space, people just make it seem like everything is easy. So that's
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
expectation. So we're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm supposed to send 10 DMs. And I was telling someone like,
Mhm.
if you look at it, everyone sucks in the coaching industry. Like, and then like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, take a look at like Russell Brunson or Ty Lopez or Dan Henry or Grant Cardone or whoever.
Mhm.
Russell Brunson has this thing of like the irresistible offer, right? So
Mhm.
irresistible offer means that it's so good that people can't resist it.
Right.
Meaning that whenever he puts it out, like a lot of people are going to buy it.
Mhm.
Like, but if you listen to him, he will say that maybe, I don't know, 10%, 20% of the people actually buy it. I'm like,
Mhm.
now imagine that you have to get heart surgery and you go in there and they tell you, hey, this is an irresistible, offer. We're going to fix your heart. And
Mhm.
20% of the time it works. Like, bro, that's terrible. Like you would not work with me.
Right.
Not, but people have the perception that like, oh, Russell Brunson, whenever he puts something out, 99% of the people buy. I'm like, that's not the case. It's
Mhm.
just that they're doing action on a bigger scale. So his
Mhm.
20% of people buying is much better than ours because we have like 50 people in the webinar versus they have like 10,000.
Right. Right.
So I'm like, but if you don't know that, your expectation is off, and a lot of people don't talk about that. So whenever you hear Alex or Mosey or whoever say, "Yeah, it took me 10 years to do this thing," or "It took me 1,000 YouTube videos," or "It took me
Mhm.
75 podcast episodes," or "It took me sending 100 DMs every day for 90 days," like that's the things that we have to pay attention to, not just like, hey, I started a podcast and now I get clients. And then we just start a podcast and the first episode, we're like, bro, I didn't get clients. It didn't work. That's like,
Right. Right. Man, that's real, man. And I'm so glad that you pointed out the fact that even when people say, hey, the offer is irresistible, it's so good that, it makes people feel dumb if they don't accept it. And you see the crazy numbers that some people are able to do. We're just looking at the result. And like you mentioned, like we're not able to see behind the scenes, what are the conversion rates? What are the
right.
close rates? And how many people do they have that's allowing that to come to pass, right? Like if you are a one person business and you comparing yourself, and I'll use your example, right? You comparing yourself to a Russell Brunson, somebody that has a team of people that are fulfilling and doing all of these things that allow them to do what? Make tweaks, make pivots, make changes, put out multiple offers, continue to build their customer list, their prospect list, and do what? Have success when they launch offers. Man, if you ain't got all of that in place, then you're going to be misaligned when it comes to what your expectations should be and what is going to be success for you versus what's success for somebody like Russell Brunson.
And I think what some people have to realize too is that like you're making the same amount of money as other people, but the amount of money you're bringing in is different. Meaning that I
Mm,
talk to people and they're like, yeah, I'm doing, I don't know, whatever, let's say 50, 60K in a month, right? And
mhm.
you're like, man, I want to get to 60K a month. And it's like, yeah, but this person has like 10 people they have to pay. Their rent is like $4,000. Like by the time you take away all their expenses, they're making the same amount of money as you making like 10K a month. But we just want to be
Oh,
able to
nobody talks
post
about
these
that.
yeah, we just want to be able to post like these big numbers. So people are doing like they're getting there by any means necessary. So it's like
Mhm.
they're burnt out, they're stressed out, they're hiring like way too many like salespeople. They have setters, they have all this type of stuff, just so that
Yeah.
they can post and tell you like, hey, I'm making 60K a month, I'm making 100K a month, but then they're depressed, they have all these bills. And in reality, you were happier and making more money at like 10. That's why I'm like, it's not
Mhm.
about the money. It's about like being aligned like with your purpose and like what you want to do and like your why. And then when you
Wow.
figure out that, you align your actions with those things.
That's good. That's good, man. And with that in mind, it kind of reminds me of two different types of mindsets. Like, let's say, for example, going back to our original example, somebody wants to make $20,000 a month and they don't take the time to do what you mentioned, which is asking themselves why. Like, what is it really that you want that you're attaching this 20K per month as the only way that you're going to be able to get it? And I think for some people, they have the mindset of like just checking a box to say other people did it and I want to do it too. I just want to check the box to be like, I had a 20K month too. Or are you working towards living a specific lifestyle? And I think that those are two different perspectives when it comes to approaching our goals. Do you just want to check something off and said you did it? Or are you checking things off because of the fact that it's allowing you to live the lifestyle that you ultimately want to live? And I think back to the experience that you were sharing about going to Paris. Like, there were things that you wanted to do, and you weren't just saying, hey, I just want to check off the box and be like, I went to Paris too. Like, no, like you're
Right.
trying to create an experience for yourself, for your wife. And you're like also testing yourself. Like, you want to see, do I have it within me to go all in, to risk it all? Like, it goes beyond just saying, I checked the box, I did it. Now what? On to the next thing.
Yeah, I think it's about being comfortable like with who you are. Cause like I wanted to go to Paris, but whenever it came to us getting married, my wife wanted to have this big wedding and have this fancy dress. And I wasn't against it or for it, but I told her, whatever you want to do, I'm down with it, but you have to be able to tell me why. And it can't just be because I feel like it or I want to.
Mhm.
And at first she didn't understand. I was like, no, just like take time to think about it. And then she realized like, oh, I can't tell you why I want to have a big wedding. It's just because I've been programmed as a woman with magazines and everything to want this. But I actually, when I reflect on it deep down, I don't want it. I just want to be able to tell other people I did it. So I'm like,
Mm,
all right, so now we're going to go in debt and do all this type of stuff to be able to, like you said, check a box to give it to other
yeah.
people. When in reality, we could just go do something else that we really want to do. So that's what I mean. I
Right.
think there's a lot of people in the coaching industry that are uh, putting themselves into mental depression and bad situations to try to please other people. When in reality, it's like just go do the things that you're aligned with. And
Mhm.
if you do that, you're going to be more likely to actually try to achieve those things, but you're also going to be fulfilled along the way and actually keep doing them. Because we all see coaches that start killing it, and then after a while, it's like, what happens to those people?
Right.
Because like they burn out, like that's not really what they were trying to do.
Mhm.
So I think that's like it's just about being comfortable. Like there's too many people that just want to make certain numbers. It's like for what?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, man. Like, D, you have come on here and really dropped gems because we know that when we talk about tough times and overcoming them, it looks so many different types of ways. And, just to kind of summarize the things that we talked about today is having that mindset, shifting it from thinking about what is the worst that going to happen, versus looking at what's the best case scenario and meditating on that, making sure that the things that you consume are in line with that. And then in addition to that, also making sure that you know why you want to go after certain goals, why you want certain things. Like, you touched on how important it is to get to the heart of why you're pursuing the things that you're pursuing. And I think that that's so, so important, man. With that in mind, do you feel like there's anything else that coaches need to be aware of when it comes to overcoming the tough times that they will face along their journey?
I think one thing that helped there's two things I'll share. Like
Okay.
I'm a big fan of like just giving like practical tips, right? Because sometimes
Mhm.
people go on these like rants or they're on these shows and it's like it's good advice. They get hyped up and then they're like, okay, what do I do? Like later, it's like what do I practically
Mhm.
do? So the first thing that I've started doing that's really helped me out that you could do as well is like
Mhm.
whenever you want to achieve something, right? You make like you've heard people say like make a vision board. So let's say I want to go to Paris, right? Or
Right.
let's say I'm a coach, I want to make money. So, all right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna maybe put a picture of the house that I want, like clients, maybe some money, and then I can either save this to my desktop or look at it and get inspired.
Mhm.
That's cool. But what someone introduced me to the other, like a couple of weeks ago, I think, was called
Mhm.
like a mind movie. Have you ever heard of this before?
I've heard the term, but I'm not sure if it's going to be in the way that you mentioned it. So like I'm open, like I've heard mind movies. I've heard people talk about that when it comes to like copywriting. I heard people talk about that when it comes to like memorizing and remembering things and making things more vivid. But I don't know if that's the where you're going with it. But like
Yeah.
I've
So
heard the
so
term. Okay.
basically what my friend said to do is like this, like when you have a vision board, it's just stationary. You're just like looking at it.
Right.
So it's okay, but it's not really to the next level. What happens, like if you think about books like Think and Grow Rich, is like you're visualizing it like in your mind, you're closing your eyes, and it really helps you. Like when I was trying to go to Paris, I would just close my eyes and I could almost like imagine myself like being there. And that really helped. So she's like, what you can do is you can go on like Canva and you can just put images that are related to your goals. Like if you want to go to Paris, find an actual video of Paris and like money and like clients and all these types of things. So now it doesn't just live in your brain, like you can actually see it and you can keep
Wow.
watching it again and again and again. And then if there's people you want to share your vision with, it's not just telling them, you can share it with them. And so like you can watch this day after day after day and actually get inspired rather than just relying on your brain. Like you're seeing the same thing. Um, so I started doing that, and that has been like super helpful. And I think the next thing that I did that was super good was like give yourself a goal and give yourself like a deadline. So like,
Mm,
hey, I want to maybe have this many clients by the end of January 2024. The day that you make that decision, go buy a notebook and do what I did, right? So day one, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. I have absolutely no clue how I'm going to get there, but this is what I want to do. And your only promise is not to achieve the goal. Your only promise is to not quit before you get to the end of whatever that date was. And if you
mm,
dedicate yourself to doing that, amazing things will happen. Like if you just say, I'm going to just write in this every day and share my journey, and my only promise is to not quit before the end of whatever that date is,
mhm.
you will learn so many cool things about yourself because it forces you, like when you don't have a choice, you have to get creative because you're
Yeah.
in this you're in like a how can I mindset and not like
Mhm.
a oh I can't. Oh well, I have to pay the rent, so I can't do this. You have to get creative, like, oh, and I gotta text this person, or maybe I gotta sell my clothes, or maybe I gotta do, like, you start coming up with stuff. And by the end of that, you realize about yourself, like, yo, I'm a lot stronger than what I thought. Like I can achieve a lot more. And so now when you face other hard times, not only do you know that you did it, but like, do I have it right? Yeah. So like I actually have mine like right here. Like this is like the
Oh,
one that I
nice.
wrote. This is like
Yeah.
one that I wrote like for like when I went to Paris. It's
Mhm.
like I can actually like look at this. This is not just like in my mind, like I know I did it. I can actually like
Right.
pull this open and be like read a page and be like, yo, I don't know how I'm gonna do this today. And then you're
Mhm.
just thinking back on like, yo, like I really did that. Like there was times
Yeah.
that I wanted to give up, maybe for 40 days straight, but you didn't.
Mm.
So next time you want to invest in something or you're about to go through something that seems impossible, like you already did it in the past and you're a better version of yourself now. So like you can do it.
Right.
And like you never know, like for me, like when I wrote this at the time,
Mhm.
I'm thinking it's just for my wife. But now I realize I'm like, yo, this is for like this is bigger than just for her. Like other people could read this, they can get inspired because there's a lot of stuff in here that's about that mindset of like how I felt and how I wanted to give up. So I think if you make a mind movie and you know like what your goal is, but then you journal it and you make a promise to yourself that I'm going to keep writing until the end. That's my only goal, not necessarily to achieve the thing, but to just pursue it. You, even if you don't reach the end, like you'll be surprised what you accomplish along the way.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I appreciate you for actually providing actions that people can actually do. Like you mentioned, sometimes people will just talk about, theories or talk about, good ideas or things that people should consider or think about, but not providing them with action steps. And I really appreciate you for doing that. And it's simple stuff, right? The things that you mentioned, find clips that relate to the thing that you want to accomplish and create a mind movie and watch it every day. And create a journal, buy a journal, a notebook, and like you mentioned, the most important thing, setting that date of how long are you giving yourself to, go through this process and get to that goal, and making an entry every single day, regardless of if you feel like you're making progress or not. Just continuing on that journey to make those entries and do what you need to do in order to, get to that end date and see what occurs. So now, man, I absolutely love that. And with that in mind, kind of looking into 2024, what are some projects that you're working on that you're looking to achieve before the end of next year?
So there's a couple. So I have one before for the end of this year. So I just
Okay.
launched like a new, I just launched like a new program. So like I realized a lot of the conversation I have with people are about mindset. So I'm like, man, I should just have like a program that gives people the step by step, because it's easy to just have a conversation like this. They get motivated, but there's like a lot of stuff like, what do I do here? How do I do this? So I
Right.
realized there's like a step by step framework that I use. So I just launched like a new program called like Extreme Faith. My
Nice.
crazy goal, my big dream is to have like 100 people in there. It's just like a $97 a month thing. So it's not like a high ticket
Mhm.
crazy thing. So my goal is to have like 100 people in by the end of the year. So it's like 100 people in like a month, which is like big. So my thought process is like, if I aim for that and I fail, I should at least have a decent amount of people, rather than if I just try to get
Yeah.
10 and I fail, I have like 2. And
Right.
then my goals for next year are kind of crazy as well. So
Mhm.
I want to do an in-person event in Paris to kind of bring like some of this like full circle, right? It's like I went
Yeah.
there, I took this notebook, I have all the mindset stuff, and now I want to bring a group of other people achieving their dreams and have a mastermind there. And I
That's
was telling my
beautiful.
wife, I was like, this is the best place to have it, because this is like where we kind of learned the mindset here.
Yeah.
So that's one goal. My goal before I go is to learn French. That way, when I'm
Mhm.
there, I can like, they speak English there, but I'm like,
Mhm.
that's just something I always wanted to do. Is like, bro, to be
Right.
in Paris and to be able to speak French,
Right.
like, it's
That's next level, man.
yeah. So that's my goal. And then I'm living in Hungary. I'm living in Budapest, Hungary, and everyone tells me
Mhm.
how hard Hungarian is. So I told them, I
Mhm.
said, not only am I going to learn it next year, but I'm going to learn it
Mhm.
while simultaneously learning French. And then I don't want to
Wow.
hear anything about like, don't ever tell me how hard dreams are. They might be hard for you, but like I don't have that same mindset. So
Yeah.
those are like my 3 big ones for like next year, like going to Paris and having an event, being able to speak not fluently, but at least like enough to order stuff and like get around.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, be able to speak uh, conversational Hungarian. So I want to do the event in May. So again, like we're talking about, I have the date, and then by the
Yeah.
end of the year, so like the whole year, like be decently conversational in Hungarian. I think doing both of those would be super dope.
Yo, that's really dope, man. Like I can see the building blocks, right? When you look at it from the perspective of you just launched a program, and then many of those people that are in that program are going to be able to benefit from the event that you do in May next year, right? And that's a perfect way of connecting and building relationship and bonding with those people throughout the first half of the year, the first few quarters of the year. And then they'll be like, "Yo, where I sign up? Like, let's go to Paris. Let's do this
Exactly.
thing." And as you mentioned, getting your Duolingo on, making sure that you are able to speak the language. I think that that's a great goal, man. And I'm excited for you, man. And I know that you'll be able to achieve all of those goals that you set. Yo, you've come on here and you drop crazy gems on us throughout this entire podcast. And if there's anybody who's tuned in, any coaches that want to tap in with you, want to learn more about your program or connect with you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, the best way would be like on Instagram. So just find me by my name, which is at, and then obviously at, but Dee Greene. So D and then 2 E's, and then green, like the color with the E at the end. So GREENE.
Perfect. And I'm gonna definitely make sure we got the link to your IG so everybody can go over there and follow you and show you some love. With that in mind, before we go, just want to hand the mic over to you. Are there any last or closing words that you like to leave us with, or any questions that you like to ask me before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always say when I'm on a podcast with people, like for anyone that's listening, is like go implement. Like this podcast episode, not going to do anything for you just listening. Like I've been there before when you're trying to get to the next level and you're listening to stuff, and like most of the people just listen to it, get pumped up, and they go back to life as normal. So now that you've listened to this, like come up with the game plan and then figure out like what's the next step of action that you can do today. So when we get off of here, you don't just like, okay, time to just go back, like figure out like what's that next thing that you're going to do, big or small, whether that's reach out to someone or research something or find a YouTube channel, or maybe it's going to my Instagram and subscribing, whatever it is, like figure out that next
Yeah.
action step and do it.
I love that. Well, D, thank you again, man, for coming on here. You dropped so many gems. I feel like any coach out there who's going through tough times, you've definitely given them what they need in order to get out of that and to overcome it. I appreciate you for that, man. And if you're ever interested in coming back and be a guest on the podcast, it'd be an honor, man. But thank you for everything that you shared with us today.